Hey guys, my name is Chris, and this is a Little Sister Speaks podcast. Today I have with me Rick. He is a native of Lafayette, Louisiana. Got a lot of local people coming in lately. I love it. Rick and I have been kind of hitting around about a couple of things. Number one issue I always like to bring up first is mental health because mental health trumps all health. If you don't have great mental health, then you don't have great health. So Rick is open to talking to me about mental health in a man's perspective. I wanted to touch on relationships with him today because it sounds like he's got a story to share with me. So, Rick, let's just get started with, I guess, the condition of your mental health or wherever you want to start there.
Well, I am diagnosed as bipolar,
Okay.
and supposedly it's not a recent diagnosis. It's something I've been struggling with on and off since I want to say 2010 maybe is
Hmm.
whenever I finally got diagnosed as bipolar. But I've been going to see counselors. My parents have brought me to therapists. I've been in mental hospital before, and I've been diagnosed with different things, anxiety and depression, and finally this bipolar diagnosis is seems like the one that is really stuck. Medication that I'm on right now has been doing wonders for me. I feel like I am finally on the right regimen. I
Hmm.
feel like I'm finally healthy, and so I'm willing to talk about it now.
Okay, I gotcha. But it takes some time, and there's some comorbidity there, like bipolar. A big part of it, exactly half of it, is depression for those who experience true bipolar 1, true bipolar 2. And then there's just like all these different entanglements with all these other disorders. So sometimes it does take a while to get in the right directions. And you said that your medication is working well for you. So
Yes.
how are you feeling now as compared to, I take it that, trust me, I have bipolar as well, so I know how long it can take to find the right medication, but how are you in your frame of mind now compared to whenever you first started this journey?
Oh, it's funny. It's like I'm almost excited to take my medication. It's like
Hmm.
I feel good about it. As before, I never wanted to be on medication. And I don't know if that was just the stigma of having a disorder that I needed medication for, made me not want to take it, knowing that it wasn't the right meds for me. I wasn't feeling like myself. But the meds I'm on now, I feel like the old me. I'm a part of this recovery now. Whereas before, it was just, okay, the doctors ordered this. I'm going to do what the doctors say to an extent until I disagree with the doctors. And then I'm going to do my own thing, and I'm gonna get
Hmm.
off my medication without the doctors knowing that I'm getting off my medication. And
Hmm.
every time you get off your medication when you're bipolar, bad things happen. So it's a cycle. I know several people who are bipolar that go through the same cycle of they're good while they're on their meds, but then they get off their meds because they think they're good. Then they end up having to get back on medication.
The mood switches will always return. This is a lifelong disorder. No recovery, just treatment.
Yeah, I'm at that stage now where I'm content with being on these meds for the rest of my life, and it's not a big deal to me. It's something that I'm gonna live with. It's something that I do live with. Like I said earlier, I kind of enjoy being part of the recovery process. Enjoy talking to my doctor about what I'm taking now.
And not experiencing the horrible side effects that come whenever you're on the wrong dose of
Right,
medication. Your frame of mind right now seems pretty good in terms of your mental health. So, talk to me about a time when your mental health wasn't so good.
man. I've been hospitalized about four different times into a mental hospital, and those stays at a mental hospital are not fun. Some people think it's like a vacation, like we get to go off and be taken care of for weeks at a time in this facility. It is the worst vacation you can ever dream of. Trapped inside a hospital with other people who, in the state of Louisiana, I don't know if you're aware, you probably are, but I don't know if people listening to this are aware that these mental hospitals also are run as addiction hospitals.
Hmm.
So you're there with meth addicts, alcoholics, people with actual mental disorders, all in the same place
Hmm.
with doctors that are treating everyone the same. So you're treated as a meth addict or an addict in general. And you have to live with these other people for weeks at a time. And it's not fun. It's
Hmm.
not. And they overdrug you because they're trying to drug everybody the same. They don't really care for you one on one-on-one. It's a
Mm.
blanket. The hospitals where they can try to treat as many people as they can for the shortest amount of time that they can, when I find it's the hardest to overcome what is actual, I'm just bipolar too, y'all.
Yeah. And
That's it.
you're in a crisis. Like you don't want to be treated the same as everyone else. You expect to have some sort of, I guess, classification. Like groups are really nice because then you speak with people who have your exact same experiences.
But then groups can also be chaotic at times because some people like to interrupt group and they like to, I don't know. I mean, I like going to groups, but there's a lot of drama in the hospitals I was in.
My friend likes to call those places medicine farms
Medicine
for
forms
a
is
reason.
That's a good
Yeah,
description of.
yeah. And I also spent some time in one of those facilities, but in a different state. So I feel like I can't really offer any perspective on where Louisiana is, but trust me, I've done the research whenever I
Hmm.
got back home. And it's not a good place to be for your mental health. It's a lot of the policies are very antiquated because just as you said, you're treated as if you're an addict. Well, that's what they did like back in the 70s and 80s. They just put everybody in the loony bin and everybody was treated the same as you said. And those practices have not really changed here.
Correct.
It's not a good state to be in if you're really looking to move forward and progress on your mental health. But you had mentioned to me earlier that at some point in your life your mental health was also affected by a relationship. And
Yeah.
that is something that I would like to touch upon as well. How
And
was that?
so I've been married for close to 14 years. We have 4 children together. We're now going through a separation. I'm going to get divorced. I'm already calling her my ex-wife. And as much as I plead for her to not go through with the divorce, it's happening. And a quote from her that she said, which is sad, and I don't say this to vilify her or anything like that, but she stated that if she knew I was bipolar, she would never have married me in the beginning,
Mm.
because that's just something she's not willing to go through with me.
So, but she had known you whenever you first received your diagnosis, or
I've been seeking therapy. My parents were always worried about me when I was a kid growing up.
right.
And they brought me to counselors and they brought me to therapists. And I was given medication for anxiety. And then I was given medication for depression, but I was not diagnosed bipolar. When I met my wife, I was a different person. I was in college. I was over all of that stuff. I was a happy go lucky, fun person to be around. And we met and we got married quickly after we met. And we didn't really do a lot of homework on each other, to where
Mm.
I didn't really reveal to her, oh, yeah, I had these issues growing up where I went to a counselor and I went to a mental hospital this one time. And, my parents were always worried about me. That was stuff that I hid from her. And I didn't hide it on purpose, as in, like, well, maybe I did self consciously, because when you're dating someone, you don't want to tell them all the worst things about you. But
Right.
it wasn't like I was trying to trick her into marrying me. It was just something I thought I was over. I didn't think any of that was going to resurface. I didn't think I was bipolar. I thought I
Mm.
was cured. And then I had tragedy after tragedy after tragedy happen to me. I lost my dad. He died of cancer, which was really hard on me. He was diagnosed with stage 4 esophageal cancer that's already spread to his lungs and hearts by the time they found it.
Mm.
So they gave him like a 2 month to live, and
Mm.
that was hard on me, like knowing he was going to pass away. He hung
Oh
on.
yeah.
He hung on there for a while. He didn't go when they told him he was going to go, but we lost him. And then our house flooded in 2016. That was around the same time that I lost my dad. I lost my job. Like, all these things started to happen one after the other. It was like a domino effect. With all that going on, I had a mental breakdown. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
I
so
mean,
I was
that's a lot of that's a lot of
a lot of trauma.
yeah.
I had a mental breakdown and I went to the mental hospital. And that's when I got diagnosed with bipolar 2. And I disagreed with the diagnosis because my thing was, with all that shit that happened to me, that would cause anybody, a stable minded person, to have a mental breakdown. So I disagreed with the doctors and I was like, no, I'm not bipolar. I'm just going through a lot. I took the medication and I did the therapy and I got out of the hospital. Best way I knew how was compliance.
Right.
Once I was back on the outside, I tossed those pills down the drain. I was like, I'm not bipolar. This is just some tragedy struck me and I'm going to be okay. And I was okay for a little while until I had another manic episode.
Mm.
And the mania kept resurfacing to the point where I can't fight it anymore. I agree with that diagnosis because when I'm not on my meds, I can get pretty manic.
You feel it? That's crazy because our stories are actually a lot similar, but the timeline is kind of different. So I received my diagnosis in 2020, and it was after a lifelong, hey, you have depression, hey, you have anxiety. Let's try this therapy, let's do this medication. And it wasn't until I was 24 that they finally did all the evaluations and I actually got a thorough assessment. And then they were like, okay, cool. I was in such denial, Rick, like I began spiraling just from the diagnosis because it was like, is that it? Do I finally have it answered? Because I'm more on the manic side. I have bipolar 1, so I experience more frequent episodes of mania. So that all started when I was about 13. And then that's when they just gave me the same diagnosis as you had. They likely just thought it was something different or it was puberty. Yeah, whenever it came to the point where it was like, okay, no, this is a cycle, this is recurring. So we have to diagnose you with this. And I took it really hard. I took it really hard. It's like almost, it made too much sense,
Mhm.
you know? And like you said, that disorder in particular, I don't know what it is, but it just has this huge stigma to where it's right up there with schizophrenia because it's not being properly treated. It's
Mhm.
being treated as if your severe manic episodes are most of the time not psychotic episodes, but they're being treated as such. You're being given tranquilizers, you're being given sedatives. It's a different disorder, so it should be treated differently.
I'm wearing my Marvel shirt because I'm a big fan of Marvel,
Yeah.
and feel like I don't know if you know anything about X-Men or the mutants. The X-Men, their mutant gene has to get activated by stress, and I feel like our bipolar gene gets activated by stress, and then once it's activated, we're there. There's
Oh
no going
yeah.
back.
Now that I know, sometimes I gotta be like, oh shit, Chris, your bipolar is showing. Like you need to you need to just like rein it in. Take a
Yeah.
chill pill. Take a chill pill. The mania, I feel like, is what really sets bipolar apart from everything else because
Mm,
people still don't really understand it. They don't understand that in our minds, it's almost like a dual personality almost. Whenever I'm manic, I'm way up here. I'm talking, I'm laughing, I'm smiling to everybody. I don't care. Who are you? What's your name? Like super duper outgoing, extroverted, over the top. But then flip the switch, you get put under stress or you just have like your natural rhythm flip and you're in the bed for 4 days and nobody can really contact you. Nobody really knows what's going on with you.
yeah. Another thing about not wanting to take the medication prescribed to you is you miss those manic episodes whenever it brings out your creativity. Because, like,
Mm,
I can draw. I can draw really well, but I feel like I only can draw when I'm manic. And if I'm not in that stage, I'll doodle and it's not what I want.
yeah.
It's not what I'm hoping to come out as. But whenever I'm manic and I'm doodling, it's wow, I can't believe I made this. I'll look at
Hmm.
it the next day and be like, oh yeah, I made that when I was manic. I
Like you
can't do
see,
that unless I'm manic.
almost like two different personalities. You
Hmm.
know, there's manic Rick and then there's depressive Rick. You know, it was called manic depressive disorder for the longest time because they were like, oh, this is not actually, they're not actually switching. They're just on these two different ends of the same spectrum. And then there's really no place that they meet in the middle. They're bipolar. Like, great. That sounds so much better than manic depressive because that's not all that goes into it. Most of the time, we can be okay. We just have to be put in a certain supportive environment with people who understand.
And so many people don't understand when they hear it because like I had a good friend of mine when he found out that I was diagnosed bipolar, he was like, that's a weird diagnosis for you because I've never seen you get angry at anybody. I'm like,
Mm,
that's not
that's not
bipolar.
real. Mm,
It's not me getting angry at you. It's
mm-hmm.
that has nothing to do with it.
Bipolar people are highly creative. Whenever I'm in a manic phase, it's almost like I see things that people don't see, or I see things in different ways
Hmm.
that nobody. And then that's whenever the creativity starts to come out, they're just like, where did you get your ideas? I did it when I was manic. I hadn't slept, and like you said, I hadn't slept in like 21 hours. So I was just up doing stuff, and this is what happened. Sometimes it does feel a bit like a superpower, but then, superheroes crash sometimes. So
Yeah.
yeah, you mentioned that your wife said that thing to you. And of
Hmm.
course, that's a perspective a lot of people have. I have had exes tell me the same thing, like, "Oh, if I ever knew that you had mental health issues, I would have never gotten with you." And then it's like, "You would have also saved me a lot of trouble because this entire time you didn't understand." Anyway, so I ended up having to do a lot of the work myself.
Yeah. And in my wife's defense, I will say this, her grandmother suffered from bipolar disorder and was in a mental hospital almost her entire life. I've never met her grandmother. She was dead before I married my wife,
Hmm.
but it had to have been untreated or not treated properly for her to be in a mental hospital for that long. But I think
Hmm.
just that fear of knowing, oh, this is what could happen in old age. They could just be away and not with me and the family. I think that scared her from wanting to be with someone who had the same diagnosis as her grandmother.
Oh, okay. So that makes a lot of sense. That's a good context for her situation. But also, if you didn't ask for clarification, she also could have just meant it's too much work. Like
Too much.
it is
Yeah,
very hard to be with someone who is bipolar. I wouldn't want to put up with that either, right? It's just that she
right.
hadn't done her homework on and like, oh, he's laying in bed, he's not feeling well, he must be depressed. Okay, this is normal for him. All right, he's up all hours of the night lately, he's listening to loud music, he's drawing, something's up with him, but that's normal for him too. Not really accepting it as okay, just recognizing that there are going to be mood swings and it comes with the territory.
Yeah.
So if she wasn't fully prepared for mood swings, then I would like to ask you if you could clarify, though, your friend had said that that was a weird diagnosis for you, bipolar.
Yeah.
But then he kind of gave a reason. Is that something that you like talk to your friends often about? You as a man, do you feel comfortable sharing your mental health with others?
I only like to talk about my mental health with other people who have been through it and who also gone through it and who also are either advocates for it or know what they're talking about. It's not that I don't like talking about it, but I don't want to have to spend time with my friends explaining things to them. I just want to have fun with my friends.
Mm.
If they're not going to educate themselves on mental illness, I don't want to be the one to educate them because that just takes
Gotcha.
away from the camaraderie that we can share, the fun we can have, and maybe that's a little bit of my mania showing where I'm like, I just want to have fun right now. I don't want to
Yeah.
educate right now.
But that makes sense too, because if you have to sit there and tell them, I can feel whenever my meds are wearing off,
Yeah.
and like you said, they haven't experienced that themselves, then they're probably not going to understand. I think it is very important to have friends in your circle, at least, maybe not all of them, but at least some of them who are like, yeah, bro, I get it, me too.
Hmm.
Type of situation that exists when you put yourself in similar circles.
I will say this though, I have a lot more girlfriends that I feel more comfortable talking to because I just feel like the feminine present, they're easier to be vulnerable with than my guy
Mm,
friends. Do have some guy friends who I feel comfortable talking to. I know they're sensitive and they're able to understand and be there for me. And those friends I do appreciate even more. But there's a lot of guy friends who are just my drinking buddies or just my
mm.
friends to hang out with, just my friends to have fun with. And those friends, we don't really talk about topics like that, whether it's mental illness or just how we're feeling on the inside. We don't talk about it.
So you just don't. And is it just an unspoken thing, or it's kind of like, nah, dude, that's gay. Like, I don't. We're still legitimately in 2024 having those bullying moments, like
Yeah.
men sharing their feelings is gay. No, it's not. There's nothing.
And the crowd I hang out with, we're all inclusive, and I don't think it's so much of a, oh, that's gay, don't talk about it situation. But I think it's still we're men, we deal with our emotions on our own.
Mm,
It's more of an internal thing than an external thing. Internally, I want to feel like I can handle my own shit and I don't need help from other guys.
mm,
It's not so much that I'm worried about getting bullied or being like, oh, that's gay, don't talk about that. And I think that might be because of how I was raised, And
mm.
that's something, a cycle that we have to break, which I can also talk about being a father and how I want my sons to be able to talk about their feelings, even though I'm having a hard time talking about my own.
But you're learning. I feel like this new generation, my kids are coming up and they're okay with talking about that, whereas we had to kind of hold our tongue a little bit more.
Hmm.
So that's why it takes us 30 years to figure out what we want to say and how we need to say it and all these things that we've just been keeping inside. So
Right.
I really, really thank you for opening up to me a little bit about your experience. And the whole reason that I have found this to be my passion is because stories are so important. Just this one little thing that you say might just turn someone's day around and then they make that decision to do something better for themselves, right? I'm just all about getting as many positive outlooks as I can. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I was glad to be able to do it today. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yep. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
All right. Bye bye.